our session on advancing your practice, putting a leadership system in place. My name is Mike O'Connor, and I am with the Leadership Circle Group. I have been with the organization for about 5 years. In my role, and I think this is really important for all of you to know, my role specifically, despite my title, is to support those of you who are certified in using our systems. As I'm looking at the list of people that are on this call, I recognize all of you as TLC certified, and there's still 2 of you on this whole list I haven't met yet, and I'm going to take responsibility for that. There are 2,000 people certified in North America alone, and it's my goal to meet every one of you before the next couple of months. So please know I'm eager to meet you, and I look forward to having some one-on-one time with you in the near future. Also on the slides, you'll see Betsy Leatherman. She has triple booked herself for this hour, but she's hoping to make a sneak appearance. I'd like you to just get a name and a face together. Betsy joined us as president of the Leadership Circle and Full Circle Group 2 years ago, and she's extraordinary. She's brought some amazing positive energy to our organization. She's highly creative, highly energetic, highly jazzed about this work, and I hope we'll get a chance to meet her today. Part of our new webinar series that we just started a couple months ago with the Advancing Your Practice is these webinars are intended to be crisp and light and single-focused in their content. So we will keep this to 30 minutes, no longer, and the way that we accomplish that is this. There'll be minimal participation during the webinar. It's going to be me providing you information, and then at the end of 30 minutes, I'm going to stay on the line, so if there's anybody who has some questions they'd like to talk through, we'll keep the line open. And then Douglas, who's on the call but muted, he's our director of marketing, he's going to follow up with all of you. And in that follow-up, it's going to include a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, a copy of the Leadership System brochure, and a recording of this call. So I want to welcome you all, and thank you so much for being here. The purpose of our call today is to overview the new leadership system that's available through the Leadership Circle. Talk a little bit about the certification process for 2016 and some potential next steps for you. We do still refer to it as the new leadership system, and that's really flawed for a couple of reasons. We've actually been certifying people in this system for 2 years now. Our first certification was in the United States in January of 2014. And it still feels new, but in the last couple of years, we've certified just about 100 people across the world in the system. A second thing, while this content will be new to you, perhaps, this is content that we've been using at Full Circle Group now for about 5 years. The thing that's new is we put it all into user-friendly participant materials. We've created a streamlined design for facilitator guides so we can teach consultants like each of you to take these materials and do wonderful things with them and so forth. So the certification program is new, but the programs and everything you'll be seeing today has actually been time-tested with clients across the world. So with that, as an introduction, I know that each of you on this call is certified in the Leadership Circle profile. And what I know with that is each of you is certified to use the Leadership Circle profile or the Manager Edition. With that, you could also run group reports, and each of you is certified to use the Leadership Culture Survey. So a typical, not always, but a typical approach that you folks might take is work with a group of given leaders, do assessments with them, and then follow up with debriefs and ongoing coaching. The leadership system goes beyond that. It's different than an assessment and coaching. It's the development side of the Leadership Development Initiative. And it's a common response when your client, a long-term client, says, hey, we've been doing coaching with you for quite some time. What's next? There are 3 major components to the leadership system. There's the promise of leadership. In the promise of leadership, we get people started on creating leadership development plans, an approach which we call the One Big Thing leadership development process. The second component is leader to leader, which is a series of 16 different modules. And then thirdly, pulse surveys. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. While the components of the system have 3 different components, it is not necessary to do all 3 components with every client implementation. We have people that do Leadership Circle profiles and promise of leaderships with their clients only, or with a client only. We have another scenario where people might use a Leadership Circle profile for a group of leaders and only do leader to leader, or maybe only do pulse. So imagine you could do any 1, 2, or 3 of these depending on what's appropriate and what the requirements are for the client that you're serving. At the highest level, if you look here down at the bottom left, you've got a given leader, And what would typically be happening with each of you up to this point is you're doing a leadership circle profile and you're offering them a debrief. The first component of the system is called promise of leadership. So imagine, instead of sitting down with each leader in a group and doing one-on-one debriefs right away, the first thing you do is you get the whole group of leaders. Imagine a group of 12. You pull them together for a half-day session called Promise of Leadership, where you go through and you distribute their feedback reports all in the same setting. I'll give you a little bit more details about what that is. Leader to Leader is a menu of 16 different leadership development programs. Each of them have the exact same agenda, but the content is different with each of them. And what you do is, based on every client that you work with, you pick and choose the modules that be most appropriate for the client needs they want to do. And just imagine, I'll give you more detail, but just imagine any one of the 16 modules has something to do with something on the leadership circle profile, most typically something in the creative competencies. And then finally, pulse survey. You're my coach. With your help, I've identified a professional development plan. You've helped me identify my one big thing and some start and stop behaviors. Pulse is a mini little assessment, mini meaning 5 or 6 questions where I send out, or with your help, we send out a survey saying, Mike's working in these 5 or 6 development areas, or 2 or 3 areas even. Please give a quick check-in and let him know how he's making progress on these development goals. You then go into your ongoing coaching sessions with pulse data every now and again, just to be another way to keep people on track. That's the highest level summary of the leadership system. Again, you can use 1, 2, or 3 components with each client implementation that you're working with. I'm now going to go through each of these systems in a little bit more detail. Promise of leadership. We have gotten extraordinary feedback about this session. So imagine this. You're working with the client organization, you're working with the executive team, and there's 12 leaders on that team. You've done leadership circle assessments, and you're pulling them together for half a day. In that half day, you're facilitating promise of leadership. What happens, you spend about an hour or so talking about their business and the implications of leadership on their business achieving its strategic business priorities. So there's a leader's guide and there's a content for you, but then you supplement it with anything you know about your clients. And you have a business conversation with this leadership team about what they're trying to do in their business and how leadership can help sustain or enable what they're trying to do. At that point, probably 2 hours into the half-day session, you then distribute all of the feedback reports to the individuals in their sealed envelopes. I should have mentioned before these things are in their hands, you've also done a very thorough overview, an orientation of the leadership circle profile. You've introduced the model with the creative and the reactive and the relationship and the task, and you've walked them through a sample so they can understand how to interpret their feedback report. You now distribute these, give them some time to go off by themselves, 20, 30 minutes perhaps, and you give them an assignment to not deep dive into the feedback report. We all know that's not enough time to do that, but just give them some direction so they can come back prepared to talk about a couple of their initial learnings or reactions. You'll then see a photo here. We've got the leadership circle mats. They come in different sizes, as small as 5 by 5 to as big as 40 by 40, and based on the size group that you're working with, there's mat activities, and these are awesome. People just love these. So imagine, instead of sitting there at the front of the room with your PowerPoint deck, you're spending a good hour, 2, maybe longer if you want, going through a variety of different mat activities that can help people start gaining insight into what are some of the things we've learned about ourselves based on the first few minutes we've had in looking at our feedback. What we have found is this. When people go through the promise of leadership and get a brief introduction, you're saving time because you're not giving a feedback introduction to each person one-on-one. You're giving it to them as a group. What you're finding is there's a lot more buy-in. People are opening up, they're disclosing. People are realizing, hey, I'm not the only one with some reactive competencies that have me worried. You can actually, if the group has some trust, you can actually get them to start disclosing some of their self-insights. And you find that the group is all a lot more open to what their feedback is. What happens, this is really important, the debrief still occurs, but it's going to occur in the near future, ideally in the next couple of days after the promise of leadership. So you've got a client, you've got 12 of them, but you have somebody who's been oriented, they have their feedback, they've had some time to look at it with you being there, so if there's any questions, you can address it. But they've had a day or two to spend time and kind of get their arms around their feedback, before sitting down with you one-on-one to really get into the details about what they want to do as next steps for their feedback. So it's time efficient. We find that it helps people with the buy-in to feedback that can otherwise be sensitive, and also still starts to build some trust within a cohort, realize that all of us have strengths and all of us have limitations. So the promise of leadership is one of the elements of the 3 included in the development system. Leader to leader is perhaps the most complex just because there's the most pieces to it. But imagine this, you've got the same group of 12 leaders, and because you've done a leadership circle profile on them and you've come to know them pretty well, and perhaps you've even run a leadership circle group report, you've got a general idea about the group's overarching strengths and development. You then have 16 different half-day modules to choose from. We think the design is best set for cohort groups of 6 to 8 leaders. When you get larger than that, people can hide and so forth and kind of get lost in the crowd. So if you have a larger client group, let's say 20, you might decide to break that into 3 different cohorts just to keep it to a really small, intimate, manageable size. These sessions are 3 to 4 hours in length. They can all be expanded. There's optional activities. They can all be expanded and be longer. They're facilitated by you. We're truly using the word facilitation. The talking part where you're actually doing the teaching is perhaps an hour, no more than 90 minutes of this half-day session. And the design is set up so if your group is across locations, you can also do it virtually. But I'd like to walk you through the general outline of a leader-to-leader module because they're all the same. Let's imagine we're in session number 4, and the content or the topic for today's session is integrity. So we're in the 4th session, meaning we've met 3 times before. First thing we do is a check-in, and you folks are familiar with the check-in process through your certification with the Leadership Circle profile. We get around in a small group, we talk about what's been happening since the last time we met. That's important because the last time we met, people made commitments to each other on what they were going to do differently before showing up to today's session. Another thing that happens before the session starts is all of your participants know the topic is integrity, and they've been asked to bring a business-specific challenge related to this topic. So what happens is we do a check-in on what's been happening with my leadership development since we met 6 weeks ago. You then, as the facilitator, introduce the new content. Again, the topic today is integrity. And you've got activities, you've got content, and so forth. It truly is a Cliff Notes version, 7, 8, 9 learning points max. Because this is content that is from the Leadership Circle model and the universal model of leadership, there's nothing here that should be particularly new to people. The integrity in this learning unit matches very closely the integrity under the operational definition of integrity and some of the key actions in the profile interpretation manual. So this isn't necessarily new content. And the purpose of this session isn't to teach them how to be working with integrity. The purpose of this session is to bring this business relevant challenge into the session and put plans into place to apply integrity principles into this business challenge. So what this would look like is you as the facilitator spent 60 to 90 minutes introducing the new content. There's been some fun activities, perhaps some games, something of that sort. You then break them into small groups and you set them up to do peer coaching. So each participant is set up in a partner or a triad, and you spend some time talking about, here's the business challenge I brought, how can I apply these integrity principles into what I've just learned in the last few minutes. And what's really happening here, which is really powerful, is they're teaching each other. Now, you'll be walking around the room, you'll be intervening if necessary, but the less involvement you can do, the better. The real takeaway here is these people are now teaching each other how to apply principles from the top half of the circle, the creative competencies, on content that you just introduced them. So people all work through their business challenges. They create some plans on how they want to use these skills when they go back into the workplace. You get back into a circle and you go public with your accountabilities. Here's what I've learned today. Here's a little bit about the challenge I brought with me to the session. Here's what I learned from my peer coaching group, and here's some things I plan to do differently and report back when we get together next time. I've covered a lot, but if you'll just understand that this learning process, a half a day in length, is approximately 1/3 of the time you teaching them something new, 2/3 of the time them being actively engaged in conversation, talking about business challenges and how they're applying leadership principles to overcome them. We ask when you do the leader-to-leader modules that you get a cohort to commit to a minimum of 6 sessions. The average client we work with does 8 to 9. And again, there's 16 to choose from, so you can have a different solution for each client organization that you work with. But the real value comes not in sessions 1 or 2 or 3. We notice that the real value starts coming in sessions 4, 5, and so forth, where they are becoming self-sufficient. They are being held self-responsible for their learning. They're managing the coaching process and the peer coaching process themselves, and they're holding each other accountable to do the things that they said they would do. So it's the perfect storm of assessment feedback, or assessment data, feedback with a certified coach, that's you, ongoing coaching that you're still offering them, and intermittently having group sessions where the group is working through business challenges together and supporting each other and learning these skills. We have found it to be extraordinarily powerful. We consistently hear people say it's nothing at all what they would have expected, and it's so very, very far away from the typical invite you into a conference room for the day and we're going to PowerPoint talk at you for the next 7 hours. What you'll see here is a listing of the 16 current leader sessions. And it doesn't take a lot of creativity to know that many of these align very directly with competencies at the top half of the circle, the creative competencies. Another thing I'll mention is we have another number of these under construction. I'm not quite sure what the schedule is, but we have a goal of actually eventually having 30 leader-to-leader sessions overall. As we do this with more and more client implementations, we're identifying new topic areas, we're identifying new ways to work through the challenges on the leadership circle feedback, so more content areas will be coming over time. But you'll have the knowledge of the group, and you might even choose to take advantage of getting a group report for your given group. So it's a role that I play. I'd be glad to help you. You can say, okay, here's the group I'm dealing with. Here's what their feedback says collectively. Let's put a plan together of what the best 6, 8, 10 modules will be for this group. And the plan is to meet with them every 4 to 6 weeks for a half a day. The third and final element of the leadership system is the pulse surveys. Imagine you're my coach, and after a session or 2 with you, after getting my feedback, you have helped me zero in on the one big thing I want to do differently as a leader. And then with your help, I identify the one creative behavior change I want to make and the one reactive behavior change I want to make. We might say you could do 2 creative behavior changes and 2 reactive, but we really want people to not do 5 or 10. We want them to do 2 to 4 development goals. What you then do is you log into the Pulse system, which you'll have access to after getting certified, and you will enter their goals into the Pulse system. And if you would like it, we have Catherine Anderson on our team, who's our Pulse administrator, who would be glad to double-check your work or do these with you to make sure that the goals you've entered into the system are pulsable, but basically just operationally defined to the point where in time you can send this mini survey out to a handful of people and ask them the question every couple of months, how is Mike doing against these 3 to 5 goals that he set for himself? Kind of like going to the gym when you know that you're going to get a weigh-in. One issue is you're getting the data to let you know what progress you've made in all your good work, but there's another side benefit knowing, okay, the weigh-in is next Friday. It is time that I get focused on this again and kind of keep true to some of the commitments that I've made to my team. So it's kind of a double benefit. So if you think about this and you put it all together, you've got several different adult learning concepts all working in unison. People are bringing concrete experiences to every single leader-to-leader session. There's a lot of reflective observation, not only in getting the feedback on the 360 themselves, but the work they're doing with you, their coach, as well as things that they're doing in their check-ins and in their peer coaching sessions. People are actually working hands-on with these creative competencies and how to apply them. And I'm going public when I do each of these sessions, going public with my peers, like, here's what I promise you I'll report back to next time we're together. So we found that this accommodates different learning styles. It's very relevant to the work that they're doing, and people are saying that it's very, very different than any other kind of training and development experience they've ever had. A brief summary of the certification process, because this is quite different from the certification you folks had when you went to the assessment certification. In the assessment certification, by and large, you learned how to debrief. Now, first you learned about your own feedback, and then you used that experience to learn how to debrief a leadership circle profile. And most of you probably then had a very quick introduction to the manager edition and leadership culture survey. With the leadership system certification, we take quite a different approach. You will get exposure to all three elements of the system. So you'll get exposure to promise of leadership, some of the leader-to-leader modules, and Pulse. You won't see all the leader-to-leader modules, but you'll learn or trust that the flow of every module is the exact same. The content is the only thing that's different. And we're not holding anything back, but just in 3 days, there's no way we can cover 16 half-day modules. What's unique about this program is it really is geared towards a higher level of consultant. It's for the consultant that not only is interested in doing the one-on-one coaching, but is also interested in doing the complexities of group work. So one of the elements to this, which people say is the most powerful of the whole 3 days, is the first morning. The first morning is managed by Bill Adams. He's the founder of Full Circle Group, and he's Bob Anderson's partner. That first half day is a whole message about how to have a leadership conversation, specifically as it relates to the impact on business performance. The mantra of the Full Circle Group is a leadership conversation and a business conversation are essentially one and the same. And Bill does an extraordinary job in giving you talking points and having you practice how to speak about the services that you offer as a leadership development consultant in a way that it speaks to the needs and the interests of an executive team. After that first half day, you then get the whole introduction of the whole end-to-end system. On the final day, we learned how to deploy this system in a variety of different client situations. And finally, we wrap it up with more coaching of the coaches on how to expand your influence as you're working with clients in this pretty heavy work about asking adults to change. So people are saying they're not only getting good access to new content, they're also getting a lot of great mindset on how to run their practices better. With all this, the certification process has a few different steps. The 3-day certification you'll see is stage 3, and once you leave the certification, you are certified. But prior to that happening, we do give you an overview via webinar of each of the elements. There's 4 webinars, they're recorded. Ideally, you'll come to the first webinar because you'll get a chance to meet all the other people that are in your session. But then there's one webinar on promise of leadership, one on leader to leader, and one on Pulse. So you'll have a pretty thorough summary of each of these components of the system prior to coming, so we can spend your time in the certification actually learning how to use it. Finally, because there's so many nuances and elements and choices with this system, one of the primary responsibilities I have is helping people figure out how to use all these different tools in the context of every given client situation that you're facing, because you now have, with this particular client, are we doing leadership circle profile or the manager edition? How about the culture survey? We then have the Pulse, we have the promise leadership, and we have all these choices on the leader-to-leader system. So I'm one person that's been involved with most of the client conversations or planning meetings, and I'm a resource to help you think through what makes sense given each client situation you're dealing with. So the key takeaways, as a summary of this, is you're going to walk away much more astute in how to have the business conversation with your clients. We're going to give you knowledge, and we don't assume you don't have it, but there'll be a lot of group involvement as well as our contribution to how to be compelling in using these services with senior leaders. And you're going to be having conversations with them, not about their leadership and their feedback, but you're going to be talking about complexity, adaptive challenge, consciousness as a structure, and more. I have to move really quickly here because I promised you a stop here in about 2 minutes. We have 4 different certifications in North America in 2016. We also have another 4 or so across the world outside of U.S. Our next one is just in a few weeks in Scottsdale. I believe I've got one, maybe 2 spots left. So if there's anybody that's interested, I'll ask you to reach out pretty quickly. We've got one in Washington, one in Park City, and another one in Scottsdale. All of these are extraordinary venues. We're getting away from the chain hotel conference room and trying to do something that's a lot more, just a lot better environment, and one that's really going to engage much stronger and better learning. With this, as I wrap this up, I will stay on for any Q&A, but just know I'm Mike O'Connor. Here's my contact information. If you're not in a position to write it down, this PowerPoint deck is going to be emailed to you after we're done. Feel free to call me. We could talk through and help you think through if this is right for you and what's required to make it happen. If it's something you know that you definitely are interested in, you can register online just like you did with your previous certification. And in the end, I think the real questions that we want people to think about as they think about this is, you know, what kinds of business challenges are the leaders you're serving handling? You know, are these creative competencies things that your client organizations are able and willing and will see value in doing more work with? Secondly, as you think about your practice, are you interested in working with groups and expanding into long-term group development beyond the one-on-one coaching you might currently do? Are you interested in engaging with your clients about their business conversations? And are you at a point where you're interested in broadening what you have available to serve your clients? If any of these or most of these are yeses, then this might be a conversation we might want to continue. As I wrap up, I'm going to leave you with just 3 or 4 quick examples here of things that people have said to us about their experience. So get just a minute or about half a minute on each of these slides, please. I heard that consultant talking about this gentleman in Connecticut. He was like a crusty old green guy, and this whole one big thing concept really opened him up and gained him a lot of credibility with his peers in this cohort. And finally, so folks, this is going to conclude the webinar. Douglas, I'll ask you to take it off record. And I'm going to stay on the line. So Douglas, if you'd unmute the lines. If there's anybody that wants to keep the conversation going, I look forward to it. And again, you know how to reach me. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to talk about it one-on-one. And I thank you all so much for joining us today. And I truly did it in 30 minutes.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
This is DJ.
Hey, DJ, how are you?
Good. I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to go through this. I find this whole program very exciting.
Thank you.
You know, it really is the logical next step, I think, having been a certified PLC member for some years now. I always feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of exhausted where I go next, and I think this is going to be great. So,
awesome. Well, let's open up another conversation. But what can I help you with today?
What's that?
What can I help you with today? I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation. Maybe we can talk one-on-one and figure out how to make this work for you.
Yeah, I just need to, you know, I'm just trying. I got to get my head around the seminar that you guys are planning in Washington D.C. So that's the one I'm most interested in attending.
Terrific.
And so and I assume to register for that, you guys want payment all up front. Is that how it's working?
That is how it typically works, and we can be really accommodating if you need to do something different. Why don't you and I talk through it? Yeah.
Okay. Well, then what I'll do is I'll just reach out to you one-on-one when I get a little bit more time, and same with you, and we'll explore this more. All right?
Excellent, DJ. I sure appreciate you. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot.
Hi, Mike. This is Ali Parker. How are you?
Hi, Ali. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Happy New Year. I had a question about the certifications which are in Europe. I wasn't able to find that on the website. Is there a place where I can go and look those up?
Let me follow up with you on that.
Okay.
You said Europe, is that right, Ellie?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I did. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I do know that they're being planned. I will admit to you, I'm not 100% positive they're actually scheduled yet. Last I heard, they were securing venues, so that'll be my follow-up, and it might be a week or two before I have something solid for you. Okay.
And then the other thing is there a place to go to look at pricing and to hear, you know, or if someone invests in this kind of training, it's always good to know, you know, what people are selling this to clients for and what the cost is for the consultants. So maybe that's a separate webinar, I don't know, but what can I find out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, there's so many variables there, including geography, level of leader, et cetera. That tends to be one-on-one. We do a price sheet, and a big part of what I do is I work people to kind of counsel through. You happen to live in a rather expensive part of the world, and so you probably have a different price point than I do, just based on that factor alone. So why don't we talk that off one-on-one?
Hi, Jen. This is Diane Rankin calling. Sorry I couldn't get back to you sooner. I'll give you a buzz.
Who else would like to have a question?
Mike, it's Lisa Chandler. We were talking earlier today.
How are you?
I have a 4-year-old in the background. Just one second. I'm wondering what the reason is, why the culture survey is not part of the leadership system. Is that intentional?
Oh, I'm sorry if I misspoke. It absolutely is part of the system.
Okay.
I think that graphic that looks like a solar system would be just more accurate if it just said an assessment. You could do the leadership culture survey and not do the leadership circle profiles and still go through the leader system.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity to clarify that.
No problem.
Anybody else? Well, I'm going to stay on for another minute or so, but I want to thank you all very much for joining. Please reach out or please stay on the line if there's anything else you want to talk about. I see there's still about 10 of you sitting on the line here, so I think we're probably coming to a closure. And I thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, BJ. Appreciate it, buddy.
Always do.